Welcome back, guys. In today's Spanish lesson I want to talk about huge numbers like these, right? And although we usually do not use these huge numbers in our everyday life, however, when we read the newspaper or when we read the economic or financial section, we come across these numbers when talking about economy, about GDP growth and things like that. And the reason why I want to speak of this is to clarify a very common confusion between English and Spanish that causes translations in Spanish newspapers to be incorrect. I frequently come across incorrect information in Spanish newspapers. I don't mean Spanish only from Spain, I mean Spanish from Spanish-speaking countries. And when they take economic information such as GDP growth or recession, when speaking about billions and trillions of dollars, and they take that figure from an English interview and they translate it into Spanish to publish it in the newspaper, that information is very often wrong. And this is the reason why it is wrong. We have between English and Spanish what we call false friend words, okay? Words that are identical but that have different meaning, and that causes the confusions. So I titled my topic for today, Huge Numbers, Typical Confusion Between English and Spanish. So let's begin with this number, 1 million, okay? 1 million. This is how we call it in English, 1 million when we have 6 zeros, right? In Spanish it's easy, it's un millón. Un millón. You see, you write it very similarly, it's almost identical, and it means the same thing. However, when we have 3 more zeros, it gets a bit more confusing, because here we have 9 zeros. This is what in English we call 1 billion, right? However, in Spanish this is not un billón, this is mil millones. Mil millones. This literally means 1,000 millions, okay? So, while this is called 1 billion in English, in Spanish they call it 1,000 millions. Mil millones. Here we have 10 billions in English. But in Spanish this will be 10,000 millones. That is 10,000 millions. This is 100 billions, right? 100 billions. But in Spanish this is 100,000 millones, or 100,000 millions. 100,000 millions, okay? 100,000 millions. And here we have 12 zeros. 12 zeros. Look at these. We have 4 sets of 3 zeros each. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 12 zeros in the 1. In English we call this 1 trillion. Yes? 1 trillion. And when we talk about the GDP of the United States of America, we talk of trillions, right? However, if we translate this into Spanish to publish into a Spanish-speaking press, right? We cannot speak of trillones, right? But of billones. This, what in English is 1 trillion, in Spanish is un billón. You see? 12 zeros is 1 trillion in English and is un billón in Spanish. You see how confusing this gets? So, what would be 1 trillion in Spanish? If we want to talk of 1 trillion in Spanish, or un trillón. Un trillón in Spanish would be this. Very long number. This is 1 million, right? This is 1 billion or mil millones. This is 1 billion or un billón. This is 1 trillion or mil billones in Spanish. And this is what we call 1 billion in, 1 trillion in Spanish. Yes? 1 trillion in Spanish. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, 1 trillion in Spanish. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, no, 18 zeros. This is un trillón. And in English this would be, let's see, 1 million, 1 billion, trillion. It doesn't make any sense to see what it is in English, but this is un trillón in Spanish. Let's write it down. This is such a huge number in Spanish that we almost never see this written anywhere. Okay? Un trillón. However, incorrectly, many times we can read in the newspapers the word un trillón because it has been incorrectly translated from English 1 trillion as un trillón. That's why I wanted to show you this topic, okay? One more thing I want to show you is the differences between the English and Spanish numerical notation. You can see that in English we use the commas to separate the zeros, right? To divide the groups of zeros, groups of 3, right? Just to make it more clear to the vision. Instead of having all these zeros together, we group them in groups of 3 divided by commas. In Spanish, however, we use the point or the dot to divide the zeros. And while in English we use the dot or the point to divide the units from the decimals, in Spanish is the other way around. We use the comma here, right? So while in English we would say 1000.0, in Spanish we would say 1000,000, right? This would be 2,530,350.30. This would be in Spanish 2,530,350,30. Okay? So I hope this is clear, and so you won't have this confusion that is so unfortunately common. So this is the end of the lesson. Goodbye.